Did you have a chance to look at the Google event that happened recently?
Oh no, I picked up bits and pieces on Twitter, but haven't followed.
Yeah, so Google came up with very interesting ideas. Google Pixel 8 was launched as well, and they talked about a 7-year long upgrade promise. So essentially, if you're buying the phone today, till
Hmm.
2030, you're going to get consistent Android updates. And that sounds more like something that Apple would do, but Google is promising to do something like that.
Interesting. I mean, how is it different from buying any Android phone and getting Android updates for the next
You
seven
don't get
years?
Android updates for 7 years, right? For any of the phones that you buy today. That's the interesting part. But
Uh,
MKBHD talked about this in his video. He talked about
wow.
how Google has been launching things and then shutting them off very quickly, right? So Google Stadia came up, and
Oh,
then it
that
was,
makes sense.
yeah.
That's the catch. Okay. I thought that you're talking about Android upgrades, so that's a given. But they have launched something different from like how's it different from like the regular Google phone?
So Pixel 8, again, it's a better phone from their previous Pixel 7 generation. It's just that now they're promising 7 years worth of Android updates, which they were not promising before, right? So that's the main
So
highlight of
so they're
Pixel
essentially saying that Android is not going to die,
8.
which is pretty obvious, right? Like, uh, but interesting. I think like what I'm most excited about is Google doing a lot more in AI. I was wondering that imagine if there was no ChatGPT, right? There
Mhm.
was no OpenAI, um, and Google essentially used all their power, data, etc., etc. I mean, there's less innovation at Google these days, is what we hear. But um, if Google launched everything first, people would really look at Google as an evil company. That hey, they have all this data, and they're clearly a monopoly and whatnot, right? Um, but now Google is suddenly an underdog, and they have most amount of data, amazing capabilities potentially,
Right.
and I think that the biggest advantage which they have is Android and Chrome entry into into the internet, right? And I think these two things are massive. I know Apple was considering DuckDuckGo. That's the news I read, for making like their default browser. Wasn't as serious, I guess. But anyways, I think like that's a huge advantage for Google to have, and now they are painted as like the underdogs, right? Something similar happened with Facebook as well, right? Like Mark Zuckerberg's image and Facebook's image suddenly became of a like slightly more love than earlier.
Yeah, I
But
think it's like that. Like if you become the best, people start to hate on you. And then if you're like number two, number three, they're like, okay, this can succeed. So you should
yeah,
probably focus on that.
yeah. I am totally on OpenAI gang, by the way. Like I love. I,
Sam Altman, if you're watching this,
oh,
no hate.
100%. Yeah. No, I think it's startups, right? I mean, startups are supposed to, like there should be no entry barriers, and if big tech could use their power to suppress startups, I mean, what's the point? But startups always succeed; they always win. The little guy always win. But OpenAI certainly is so huge now. But I think like it's interesting that Google is on the back foot now, and they are the underdogs, and they have this massive advantage of Android as well as um, Chrome, right? So it'll be interesting to see if they can make good use of it, right? Like
Right.
potentially they may not, because Internet Explorer also belonged to Microsoft and slowly died. But it'll be interesting to see how uh, Google comes in. So let's focus on this. What exactly have they done? AI call
So
assistant calls
yeah,
to
yeah,
you.
very, very interesting things, right? Number one, we have AI call assistant. So I think this was Google Duplex is what they made. I think 2017, 18, they showcased this. Essentially, it can answer your own calls and it can make, appointments. If you're going for like a salon, going for some, event or something, you can book things with the help of AI. In this case, AI call assistant, it basically answers your calls silently from unknown numbers with a more natural sounding voice, apparently, to engage the caller.
Yeah, I've seen demo of this. I think yeah, this is a part of the Google event which I actually saw. It was pretty scary.
Let's actually hear it, right? So
Hi, I'm a Google virtual calling assistant recording this call on behalf of the person you're trying to reach. Can you say what you're calling about?
Hi, you've won an all-expense paid trip to the Caribbean. Press 8 to claim your prize now.
Unfortunately, the person you're calling cannot take your call right now. Have a nice day.
Hi, this is
Wow.
Kristen from
it felt like the person who was answering the call on the other end was more AI than the AI itself,
Yeah.
which is
I
crazy
mean,
to imagine.
I struggle proving I'm human more than a lot of bots, I guess, very soon.
No, there is a chance we could just be AIs just talking to each other while people are just looking at us.
Yeah. But it's interesting, like, there are so many call centers that might just become irrelevant, right? Like I've seen this happen with chat. Like Swiggy made their customer support so much more efficient by having automated customer support chats, right? And I feel like a lot of more companies, I think Dukan did something which reduced their customer support reps by a lot. They used AI to do that, but I think if you introduce voice into it, like you're actually talking to a human being, essentially, effectively, right? Then you don't need any call centers. So that's
Right.
a pretty interesting one.
Yeah.
Or
There's
customer
another feature
support,
called
rather.
as unblur photos that they've come up with, right? So you take a blurry photo and it will unblur the photo, apparently.
Oh wow, yeah. I think I've seen this before somewhere, but Google
Yeah.
is doing this by default, I guess, in Google Photos.
We also have best take, right? So this was very interesting. Apparently, whenever you take a group photo, there's a chance that some people are blinking their eye, they're looking somewhere else. So what Google is now able to do with AI is that they can take the best shots of every individual and then group them together to create this photo which never existed in reality. And that's what they call as best
wow.
take for group photos. So as you can see,
Can we look at the demo?
yeah, just have a look at this. So apparently, this is what the image actually looked like, right? This face is not the best for a photo. And then what happens is, you can tap on each face and it will change the faces.
Change the expression?
Look at this.
Wow, that's insane. That's insane. And also, like, actually, if Google can do this and they don't ship it in every Android phone, then I think Google Phone 8 is off to races. I'm not sure. If only Google Phone 8 can do this and not every other Android phone, it'll be interesting to see how far this goes.
Yeah.
we have
Like,
had,
do you trust this picture? Do you think it's a real picture? Looks real, right?
No, it's not. I mean, everything else will look fake. We are already living in a fake world, Ishan. This is going to go on Instagram, making us look smarter than we actually are. Probably prettier, but we are living in an almost fake world.
Right.
It's just getting faker and faker.
It's a scary thought right there.
It is.
Magic Editor is also here, right? So I think this is what we've seen previously as well in other tools. Now it's finally here in Google. Oh, but this is interesting. You can highlight certain parts and you can change the position and size of it.
Like we have seen this happen in other tools, but not as easily. If you're able
But
to
look
do
at
this on a
this.
phone, that's insane.
What happened here was, this is what the image looked like. The camp net was not fully visible.
You could
Right?
just move the dent. Yeah.
And it would completely fill the camp itself.
Yeah.
This part is what is really interesting to me.
No, it's pretty interesting. And I think like the fact that you can do all of this on your phone is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot you can do on phone these days, but yeah.
Okay, what else? Zoom enhance. Generative fill to fill the gaps between pixels. It also predicts fine details.
This reminds me of Samsung's thing, right? Like you could basically zoom in on the moon and then they use AI to make it feel like your camera is out of this world.
Makes sense. So that was that. Google board is also upgraded now. So apparently you type a sentence, it will give you another way to type it. But the interesting thing is, imagine you're on Bumble, right? You're typing something, trying to make the talk interesting.
Mhm.
And then Gboard is going to be like your wingman trying to help you out with it.
This is, if I was in the dating zone, this is like one place I would not want to be fake. So, so people who are thinking to use AI in their Bumble, my goodness.
It's all about the pickup lines these days.
At some point, it is, you will have to get real. A bit scary.
Yeah, exactly. But I recently was talking with a founder, right? And he was talking about how he knows a friend of him who was working at Google, and he basically met him in 2020 or 2021, right? And he was talking about how Google Bard was already very strong at that point, and what Google is putting out right now is a very basic version of Bard for everyone to try out, because Google has this internal war going on.
Yeah.
If they come up with the best
They're trying to
version of
control
Bard
the beast.
for everyone, yeah, exactly, for everyone to try out, then what happens to the Google search, right? What happens to the search ads that they make money out of? So I think that's what their thought process is. But how do you think they can make money on the same magnitude of Google search ads?
I don't know. Like one very interesting insight. So one of my friends, David, DK, used to work at Google early days. And he mentioned that when Google was probably like 500-700 people or under 1,000 people, the biggest competitor of Google used to be, or internally at least, people looked at eBay as the biggest competitor, because Google had, all random search queries, whereas eBay had search queries which they can monetize, right? I think it's a similar situation here, right? That Google has search queries which it can monetize. If you like give it to AI, not sure how much you can monetize that, what happens to SEO, all those questions, right? But when I heard that, I was, after hearing that, I could make sense out of it, but I could have never guessed that Google, saw eBay as their biggest competitor. So I'm not sure what business model would work there, but it'll be interesting to see, because if they don't go for it, somebody else will for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Because it just makes so much sense, right? I found myself using ChatGPT for answering majority of the questions which I would go to Google for, because I just don't want to go through so many links.
But do you trust, and do you think that hallucination is not something that it would do, like when you're asking it?
No, I think you can be specific in your queries, right? Like just like in Google, I don't trust every writer I read, right? I mean, I'm reading a random blog. I don't trust every blog, right? So I think like just like that, when you ask ChatGPT, it usually, like most of the times it's right. So I've had a pretty good experience. I feel like the amount of time I would spend earlier on Google has significantly moved to ChatGPT in the last 2-3 months.
I'll give you an example, right? So I was using Google Bard and I just searched, right? I was making a script, I was making a reel about how, Sam Altman became who he is, right? So sort of like his journey and the lessons that he learned in his childhood. So I just asked Google Bard, right? So give me a list of all the experiences and lessons that Sam Altman has shared on public, on the internet. And it gave me a lot of those anecdotes and stories. I picked a couple of them and I made a reel out of that. Later on, when my manager was reviewing the edited video about to be made live, he searched about those and realized that was actually not true.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Interesting.
So that was very interesting. It talked about how Sam Altman sold his first startup to Google, which in fact was not Google, it was some other company. So these type of factual inaccuracies and then completely artificially woven stories, right? I think that is what I saw for the first time when I made